Good afternoon. How's everybody today? Happy Thursday. Thursday is almost over. Glad to have you here. Welcome. I wish to talk today a little bit about profits, costs, and the quality of teams, high or low quality, and whether decisions are affected in terms of what owners wish to do with regard to profits. High quality team, does that affect profits? Low quality team, does that affect profits? And why is it that so many owners plead losses, poverty? And what does it mean in terms of the choice of revenue targets and so on and so forth? So these are various issues that I would like to talk about in general. And I'll draw a few diagrams. I'll probably go through some slides here. But I want to convey a sense of connection to what you have already learned in other classes, and that this is really an economic issue, both in terms of reporting profits as well as pleading poverty. Before I do that, maybe a comment or two is necessary, is warranted about the paper that's due tomorrow. The first paper is due tomorrow. A few have been submitted. I have read only 3 of them. I have looked at 3 of them. And I have to tell you right now and here, to all of you, that I am a little bit disappointed. Disappointed in the sense that I wasn't looking for you to make a report. I was looking for you to write a paper. A paper will have a character and appearance. And I gave what that appearance looks like. You can ignore me, but I will not ignore it when I read it. I said the papers will have an introduction, and I'll tell you why I say all this. The paper would have an introduction. The paper you write will have a summary of other literature. All right. The paper will have a section that will define your model, how you are going to approach the problem, the issue, the thing you told me in your topic. And then it would have a section that discusses the results. And then it has a section that says conclusion. All right. I don't see those. Implies I've been very upfront. I'm not a policeman. I don't want to punish my students. I want to educate. If I don't see those, it tells me that you haven't thought about the paper very well. If I don't see an introduction statement, it means to me that you do not know. And if you knew, you don't know how to summarize. If you don't know how to summarize, then you haven't really thought about it. That's what it tells me. That's why an introduction becomes important. Very important. If the introduction doesn't tell me much, there is no point in my wasting my time, as it were, as a reader. I am as a reviewer of many journals, and I am on the editorial board of 3 high-level journals. And we've got people who submit papers, and if the introduction doesn't tell me precisely what's going to happen and how they're going to do it, then they have really not thought about the paper. And eventually, as I read through it, the paper becomes, in some cases, hopeless because the person hasn't thought about this. They just wanted a publication and they send it to us, and they are wasting our time, as it were. All right. But You don't need to be punished for that. You need to be advised and mentored how to do that. That is why an introduction becomes important. It means, number one, you understood the problem. Number two, once you understood the problem, you went searching for a solution to that problem, and you told me in that paragraph. That's what an introduction is. All right? Look at it as meeting your mate for the first time. And you are trying to present the best foot forward. After that, it goes downhill, doesn't it? Okay, so just think of it that way. Now, very, very fairly, I'm a very fair, efficient guy, and very, very, and I treat everybody equitably. That's my motto. And for those of you who may think that you have not done so and followed the instruction, yeah, 500, 4 to 500 is not much. But if you summarize, if you know how to summarize, you understood the topic, you see. That's the key here. And I gave you a Tuesdays to do this, and I gave you an entire semester to do 3+1, and I expect a lot. In other words, equitably, significant effort. That's what I expect. And for those of you that may feel right now that you haven't done it that way, you can withdraw your paper and resubmit it. But it's got to be submitted tomorrow. But you can withdraw your paper and submit, because I want to be fair to you. And instruction is looking at errors and then correcting them and giving people a chance to do their best. That's what I'm in business for. So I'd like to raise that flag at this point. Other than that, things are going very well for all of us here. I appreciate it. So let me go back to the topic that I wish to discuss here. Okay. Now, I am going to draw a few diagrams here and eventually use maybe a PowerPoint or two to illustrate the point. So let's begin. Let's begin. Why am I discussing this particular issue? Because some of you either now or in the future paper, in a future topic, have told me that you might want to look at it, or you may want to look at the topic, or you may want to do something very close to it. So this is just a session to help you do that as well. It's chapter 5 of what I wish to do. Okay, now let me get rid of this one here then and begin as a reminder the basics, right? The basics is some time ago somebody told you, at least in 2 classes prior to this one, at the very least, that you have a demand curve that looks like this. That's the demand, let's say in our case, it's attendance, right? The demand for tickets, right? And somebody also told you that for every demand curve, there is an associated marginal revenue curve, right? For every demand curve, associated marginal revenue curve. If you have questions about that and why that's the case, and somebody didn't mention this to you in 2801 or 2802, I'll be happy to show that using figures. But let me proceed for now. You can ask me at any point, and you can interrupt me, by the way, at any point. Now, as you can see, marginal revenue is 0 at that point, right at that point. Above that point, it's positive. Below that point, it's negative, because these values over here on the left are negative values. These are positive. Marginal revenue is equal to 0. And marginal revenue right here is marginal revenue is equal to 0, means you cannot add more to your revenue. That's what it means. the change in revenue is now maximum. You're done. You cannot improve. If you go beyond that, revenue will be negative. If you fall behind that point, your marginal revenue is still rising, right? Your marginal revenue is still rising, and you don't want to quit when something is rising until it gets to maximum level. What is this thing that gets to a maximum level? I will draw it on the right side here. Okay. Generally, I draw these two top and bottom. Okay, but I don't have the facilities to be able to do that. On chalkboard, I could do that. So the diagram I'm going to draw on the right generally goes for me at the bottom of the one on the left. But you follow, right? So I have something that looks like this, and drawn properly, this will be the revenue that arises, let me call it R, that arises as a consequence of attendance, RA. Okay, so this is attendance right here. Attendance. Now, if I were to look at this diagram and it was drawn a little bit better than it is right, the one you see now, please accept the fact that this is its maximum. Please do. And I would say that is what I would like to be. And let me call that point A naught. Okay, A0. At that point, my revenue is, as a consequence of attendance, RA is maximum now. You see that? It's maximum. If I go to the right of this, my total revenue actually will go down from, let me call this point, I've used A already, so point B. If I go to the right of point B, revenue is going down. To the left of that, revenue is rising. If revenue is rising, I am not going to quit what I do. In other words, I would admit. In other words, attendance as much as possible until I get to A naught, A0, right? But then once I pass A0, I can sell tickets, but my total revenue declines. Why? At this point here, the change in total revenue is equal to 0. That's where I wish to stop. Marginal revenue is equal to 0 means you can't do better. And then marginal revenue here on the right, on the left side, this red point right over here tells me precisely this point here matches that point over there. I am just doing this for the sake of reminding you, this is what you understand, this is what you do. Do I wish to be then, the logic and the moral of this story is, given what I'm going to do next, do I wish to admit or sell tickets beyond A0? Do I wish to do that? It doesn't make any sense to do that unless there is something else that is going to give me revenue. All right, that's going to bring in revenue. All right, because total revenue given attendance here is going to be maximum at RA. There's no point to go to the right of there. To the left of that, I don't want to stop at that point. I don't want to stop at that point. I don't want to stop at that point. I need to get to A0. More attendance beyond one that maximizes revenue is a penalty to you. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you in security. It's going to cost you in other things. All right. So that is what I wish for you to understand, given demand and total revenue. Elasticity, you know, most of you know about that, and I'll just use the green just as a reminder now. Just as a reminder, we said on any section of the demand curve above that point, elasticity is greater than 1. At any point below that point, it is less than 1, and it is equal to 1. Elasticity is equal to 1 at that point. Look what happens now. Where elasticity is equal to 1, in that region, marginal revenue is equal to 0. So these are connected. So bring in your understanding of elasticity, demand, marginal revenue, total revenue, because this is a total revenue curve up here, okay? Total revenue, and so on and so forth, to the discussion that is going to follow. So what are the diagrams that I'm going to draw? Let's presuppose now that we have a league and we have 2 owners, or at least 1 owner. Okay, he can have a high quality team or a low quality team, or you can have 2 owners, one with higher quality team, the other with lower quality team. Let's start with the one with lower quality team, and let's impose the following conditions. Okay, the following conditions pertain now as we draw here. On the left here, I will draw this. Okay, here is attendance, ATTN, that's attendance. All right, this is of course the revenue you get from attendance. Let us suppose that, I hope I draw this right. There it is. That is your revenue function. All right, that's your revenue function. And then let me use a different color so that you follow me. Then there is this thing that we call, at least in the short run, what we call cost. Your cost is going to look something like that. There is your total cost function. Where do you want to be, my good friends? You want to be at the point where the distance between total cost and total revenue is the maximum, somewhere in here. That's where you wish to be. You want to pick that point where the gap, I should say, the gap between total cost and total revenue is the biggest. Below a certain level, let's call this A0L or A0L here. Below that, to the left of that AOL, you're incurring a loss. To the right over here, you're doing the same thing. Okay, let's call that one L1. L being lower quality team. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, the total cost is for lower quality team. The attendance is for the lower quality team, and so forth. All right. Now, I will show below it in just a little bit what the profit conditions are and what the firm is likely to do, what the owner is likely to do. So on the right, let me introduce the high quality team. The high quality team will have similar conditions. Here is attendance. Oops, ATT, please forgive. Attendance. There is attendance. There is the revenue function of the high quality team. That's the revenue function. Why do I draw it that way? Well, it's a high quality team. People are excited about it. You remember loyalties and so on and so forth. And now, what is the cost function for it? It has a cost function too, just like the lower quality team. It has its own cost functions that look something like this. There is the cost function for the higher quality team. And the high quality team owner wants to maximize his profits. Maximizing profits is looking at the gap between the revenue in red and total cost in green. And let's say that is the biggest gap right there. And he chooses A star H, high quality. That's the chosen quality, number of attendance. Similar to the one on the left, if he were to admit people attendance to the right of this, he would lose. Costs exceed revenue. To the left of point, let me make these point A, point B, the same here on the left, A and B. All right. To the left of A on the right, he loses money. So the Pareto optimal situation would have to be somewhere between these points here. It has to be somewhere between these points. All right. The owner's long-term profit opportunities are defined this way. How can I show that? Well, right below this one over here now, since they are profit we're talking about, I'm going to do it in green. There's attendance. Okay, just copy the attendance above. There it is. Okay, and I draw my profit. This is now profit, okay, pi. The top figure is for revenue. The bottom figure is for profit. And I can show something that looks like this. Okay. To the right of this will be loss. Here is point B. To the left of point A is a loss over here. Somewhere he has to be in between these 2 points. And preferably the level chosen, the number of tickets sold, that is, will be equal to this number. This is profits. What about the high quality team? The high quality team will have similar situation. The similar situation is exhibited here with a different color. Okay, in his case, profits are going to be much higher. Oops, it should be consistent there. And here it is. There is the highest quality, the number. This is profits. Okay, this is profits. To the left of A, there will be a loss. To the right of B, there will be a loss. Those are the decisions. Now, the way I drew this, and I will use the diagram that is a little bit better drawn, but I had to introduce it here, how it's done. He is going to have, the owners have got to look at this. So then the low quality team could be in a small market or in a large market. The high quality team could be in a small market or in a large market. Okay. Now, how then are they going to decide to staff their team? In other words, how are they going to elect how many high quality players they're going to have or how many low quality players they're going to have? A team will never discuss this with you, but you can go and look at you can look at their staff. You can look at the number of players, the kinds of players that they have acquired in various forms, and you can tell whether they're high quality or not. And high quality is associated, as you might expect, with a certain amount of winning percentage. So let me go to that now. Let me go to that. How is it that I can show the winning percentages? We can show the winning percentages of teams both for higher and lower quality teams. All right. In this case, that will be zero down here, and here will be dollars, and of course here would be winning. Okay, down here now I'm going to have winning. Okay, winning will be 1,000% if you win all the time, right? Sometimes you're going to lose. Let me draw that diagram though first. All right. Let's see if I can show that. Here is your winning, like, oops, I messed it up. There it is, like so. 1,000% would be over here. All right. So for the low quality team, winning will not be that high. They're low quality, isn't it? Profits would be much lower. And so winning would be lower too. So in that case, let's say, let's pick a number. Let's say 220. Okay, that's the low quality team. In other words, winning is associated to profits. It is associated to revenue. You may have a high quality team and a very high quality team. Let's say the high quality team has revenue equal to this one here, and we can show, let's call that winning 375. Just picking numbers here. It's 375. Where you ought to be maybe at 500 rather than at 375. But look what 500 requires. 500 requires that you profit become way up here. Let me call it just W1 here. All right. That your profit become way up there, meaning higher profit could lead to, or vice versa, higher quality could lead to higher profits and higher winning. Now, I do this, but say, is this really the 500? Is that where team owners wish to be? Is that where team owners want to have? It depends. Okay? It depends. The high teams, winning percentages, the research that we have so far, it says, I'm going to change this now, the color a little bit to blue. That number is not really 500. It's perhaps a little bit like, say, 0.650. Okay? That's the ideal. The blue color is the ideal. And you can see the way I drew this diagram here. You could also see the winning percentages here. 650. To the right of 650, the moral of this story, my good friends, is to the right of 650. Let's call it X here. X. To the right of there, your winning percentages could be high, but profits are declining. Take a look at it. Profits are declining. So where is it that an owner wishes to be? Accidentally, they could be to the right of X, but most of them are somewhere in here, okay, where profits are rising, and except, of course, not beyond this point A0L to indicate for a loss. To the left of that would be negative. All right, nobody wants to be there, but they would be somewhere between 270, okay, and 650. The owner compares all possible profits that could be earned from all quality choices in the short run. Let me repeat. The owner compares all possible profits that he could have, that could be earned from all quality choices in the short run. We know both in MLB and NBA, and as well as the other high popular sport, football, profits are higher at higher winning percent, and they decline thereafter. Second, we know rising costs of quality overtake rising revenues that are earned, of course, from higher quality teams. So therefore, my good friends, the point of this discussion is not every owner wants his team to be at high quality all the time. I raised this in my introduction to the course. It's you and I who wish our team to be high quality all the time, not the owners themselves. Why? Because he has to deal with revenue, and he has to deal with cost, and he has to deal with profits. Right? Because those two give him whether it's profit or loss. So we may get upset. You may get upset why the Dallas Cowboys are not paying this quarterback, and why they labeled him as a franchise tag, and why aren't they paying him? Because he's going to leave this year. At the end of this year, he's going to make more money. Their calculation is, if they did that, something is going to happen to their bottom line, based on just this theory that I have just discussed this with you. Would they be willing to accept a 1,000 winning percentage for the year? Of course. But that is a strange thing happening. Going to the Super Bowl is a strange thing happening, my good friends. We can argue, and I'll give plenty of time for argument here. Okay? Uncertain things happening. Yes, there's always the plan for a club, because they invest so much money on individually and on their coaching staff and everything else. The plan is always going to the Super Bowl. That's the artificial plan. But they know for sure their internal structures dictate that if they want to definitely guarantee to go to the Super Bowl, they will get the number one quarterback. Let me focus on football now. They will get the number one tight end. They will get the number one receiver. They will hire the number one running back. They will hire the best coach in the universe, right? And the best linebackers in the universe. Can they afford that? No, they can't. But the goal is always they got to win. And us as consumers think, oh, it's the year is this year. Even we know that the team is not going to go to the Super Bowl most of the time, right? Even your favorite, I don't know, unless your favorite this year. People were saying that the Saints were going to go to the Super Bowl this year. They may still end up going until they lost to the Raiders this last Monday, right? But the goal officially has got to be that. Otherwise, players would start shirking, right? It wouldn't put their utmost effort on the field, on the arena, okay, when they come to work. And so going to the Super Bowl is semi-accidental, I would tell you. Semi-accidental. You may have the best quarterback, the best this, the best that, the best this, and all 24, 25, 50 players, superstars. But if they cannot work together, it's very difficult for them to achieve that goal. And more than that, if you have the best, you're going to have to pay really well in a competitive environment. Although this is a monopoly, but there is competition in terms of the performance within that monopoly. Okay? So, question now is, what does this lead to? Suppose the team, using this diagram here. So suppose the team has enough talent and it can guarantee to itself that it can win 650 because that is the ideal. By the way, that number is 0.680. All right. I just use 650 but illustrative purposes. I don't reveal everything so that you go check it out on your own too from time to time. So if the team is to the right of X, what do you think it will do? One of the things it will start doing is a term known as talent dumping. They start dumping talents. Okay, the New England Patriots are known for this. A year or two ago, they had a super, I think he was a left or a right tackle. I don't remember now. Trent Brown is the name. And he was the number one tackler, left, maybe right tackle, I think. And they had to get rid of him because revenue-wise, he was going to, not revenue-wise, but cost-wise, he was going to put him to the right of X. And they sold him to, who did they sell him to? To the Raiders, I think, is what they did. Talent dumping. That's why you see talent dumping. In baseball, San Diego, Houston, Florida Marlins have all dumped talent. The example of Florida Marlins is universal. It's well known. The guy, Huzenga, I think is the name, he assembled superstars. He just paid whatever needed to be done, superstars. And the accidental thing happened. They won the championship, okay, in baseball. The following year, he sold it. He sold players. They were on the market selling players. That is called talent dumping. The history of talent dumping goes way back. It's a long history indicating that the pursuit of profit has always dominated the thinking of particularly MLB, okay, Major League Baseball. The same thing happens in football as well. Now, so how do you, what is the connection between profits and quality choice in the long term? And that's what I try to introduce here. The calculations that any owner is likely to make covers many different levels of winning percentages between 0 and, of course, the number that the owner might wish to choose. 270, 375, 50, 650. The owner generally has a target for that year, which one of these percentages, and he will fund the team accordingly. He will acquire talent accordingly. The same type of analysis would hold for each potential team quality, quality level, lower quality, medium quality, and so on and so forth. Each will have its total revenue. Each will have its short-run cost, and each will have its profit functions, and each will yield a particular level of attendance. okay, that maximizes profits in the short run. That's how they make these decisions. That's how these decisions are made. So if your favorite team owner is not going to acquire that coveted quarterback, there is a reason behind it. You worry, he doesn't that much. By the way, just a reminder, they rely mostly on the value of the team rising over time than just making profit. That's where the bread and butter of owning a franchise is. So long run profit maximizing and team quality does affect. And by the way, when we say that long term profit maximizing level of quality, that in itself is constrained by profits. Okay, what I'm trying to say is profits constrain the winning. That's the point I was trying to make. Okay, in the long run, if costs eventually rise faster than revenues, then profit maximization constrains the owner pursuit of winning. The owner is not going to pursue winning. There are some owners that like to dump money onto the team, like Washington, the Washington football team now they're called. So, but profits can constrain winning, my good friends. Then there is a second issue, the second issue of competitive balance. Okay, that's the insight I want you to get. Profits constrain winning, and this issue called competitive balance. Profit variation can harm competitive balance. Okay, the fact that profits constrain the pursuit of winning can harm competitive balance on the field. When one team is located, say, where fans will pay far more for quality than fans for another team are willing to pay for it, then high profit team will win more on the average over time, depending on the market, depending on whether Chicago wants to pay high prices for winning as opposed to New York Jets or so. Not owners will choose, I should say, not all owners will choose to be lovable losers. Okay? And some with relatively large demand and large potential revenues will choose to win the most. So, as with revenue variation, profits constrain winning, so does profit variation can harm competitive balance. It's my discussion on the next topic next time, this thing called competitive balance. So profit variation can harm competitive balance. And by that, we mean that there is a certain amount of profits that firms, these teams would like to have. And that's why they introduced, I am going to argue, introduced revenue sharing. You see, Green Bay can stay in that market mostly through revenue sharing. And Green Bay is not known to pay very high salaries either, as you know. Okay, so these are the kinds of investigations that I would like you to get into. Even if you don't know where to begin, I want you to start thinking about them. And so, but just telling me what Mr. X wrote, for example, in a paper is not sufficient. I want to see what your contribution is. What is it you are contributing? What is it you are saying about the topic, right? All right. Any questions now? Anyone wishing to, before I go, why owners plead poverty? Anyone wishing to comment on what we just said? This is, of course, the theoretical point of view. You can fit the data to this and see how it looks like. If if you're very much interested, it'll be a time-consuming thing because you have to really know. There are people who write about these kinds of things. Any comments on what I said and what we talked about there? Go ahead.
I have a question. How
Yes.
exactly would elasticity play into this right now? Like the fact of price variation or price maximization and how it impacts owners' decisions.
Okay. Could you? Yeah, I didn't hear very clearly. It broke up. The first part of the question, please.
How elasticity plays
Yeah.
into this?
Okay. Why did I even talk about elasticity, right?
Well, you mentioned it at the beginning, and I just thought about it.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question, though. A very important question. What is elasticity? Elasticity is the responsiveness. The elasticity you're trying to measure, the responsiveness of consumers to a change in price, right? That's what elasticity measures. Response to a change in price affects total revenue. Okay? Total revenue, the effect on total revenue affects your profit. That's the connection. And I think there is one more issue behind your question, and I want to talk about that. Given that elasticity on the upper end of the demand curve is high, and given that the elasticity on the lower end of that curve is less than 1, where is it you wish to have? Where is it that if you are a team owner, the elasticity of demand for attendance be greater than 1 or less than 1? I think you want it to be unitary. You see, at the unitary point, you've got total revenue maximum, right, my friend? And marginal revenue is equal to 0. So if you were to raise prices below where the demand curve is lower than, elasticity is lower than 1, you're going to lose money. It doesn't do you any good. On the other hand, if you were to price your tickets on the upper side of that demand curve, you choose the good news or the bad news. If you reduce price, you lose. It's a bad news. You lose money. Money doesn't come to you. But you have more people coming to watch your game. All right? But if more people come to watch your game, look what happens on the diagrams that we drew so far. You want only so much attendance, isn't it? You don't want 100% attendance. I mean, you don't want to have a huge stadium and fill it up all the time because that has cost associated with it. Your costs will rise. So the elasticity and demand introduction was to remind you what you learned in 2802, and that applies here to profits and I should say revenue and cost, and ultimately profits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank
Excellent.
you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. It was a very good question. Very good. Okay. So why do owners plead poverty? I think most of you know that they plead poverty during negotiations, with the labor. By the way, there is a chapter on labor relations later on. We'll be talking at some point during the semester. Okay. Why do they plead poverty? I'm going to share an insight. That's why I'm raising this issue. There is an insight we learned from a very thorough study that was done of the basketball team, the San Antonio Spurs. Over a period of time, San Antonio Spurs were reporting losses. This is in the 90s. For quite a bit of time, they were reporting, but they are in existence, of course. In other words, they didn't fold. But they were also right. The value of the team was rising, and the owners were also making profit. And so somebody decided, what is going on here? And they did a very, very thorough study. And economists discovered then this issue of poverty and profits, and why they claim poverty depends on the difference between economic accounting, economic profits, I should say, economic profits versus accounting profit. Apparently, it was right in front of everyone. Okay, economists have known the difference between economic profit and accounting profits, but not applied to these teams when they report their profit. For tax purposes, what is reported is accounting profit for tax purposes. For profit purposes, okay, for the owner's take-home purposes, what they use is the economic profit. That's the insight I wish to share with you. Okay? The answer here lies in taking an economic point of view of team accounts, right, than the accounting view. The accounting information goes to IRS, and it must satisfy the IRS rules, okay? But the economic profit calculation doesn't, all right? And the economic profit calculations, you don't have, for example, you have related business opportunity costs, costs that may not be identified as cost under accounting systems. All right. There are other things like revenue shifting and advantages of cross ownership of teams. Okay. You can own in baseball and in some other, and so on and so forth. So the insight I want to point out here for you as we get to close to concluding is that depending on what kind of profit you're calculating, what is reported becomes different, and the poverty levels that are reported also are different. Now, it's not for me to tell you what economic profit is and what accounting profit is. You already have covered that in 2802. Accounting profit does not include opportunity cost. Economic profits do include opportunity cost. One final point, not just on accounting and economic profit, but in a case, I don't know how many of you know this, in baseball, you've got the concept of roster depreciation. Okay? They call it roster depreciation. In other words, you have a guy who's costing you $100 million. That's what you agreed to pay him. And every year then in baseball, you take depreciation on that individual. This is a very weird thing. It only happens in baseball. Depreciation of human talent, as it were. So, and for all intents and purposes, these depreciation numbers start getting larger and larger and larger, and the owners use it to justify poverty. All right, poverty as owners. That's why owners plead poor, at least in our system as organized. And I'm not sure if they do that in England, if there is a depreciation of owners. I have never heard of it except in the United States, and in the United States only own baseball. How they were able to get that, only only I don't know how they were able to. Baseball has its own rules, and it's been left to be very independent over many years, and nobody wants to touch that issue, and so they have depreciation of players, as it were, pool depreciation, talent depreciation. Okay, my friends, I think that's where I'm going to stop for today. And the next time we meet, we'll talk about competitive balance and what it means. Some of you are, I think, writing either now or in the second topic or third topic. In any case, I will discuss it as we go along. These should be helpful to you in one way or another to gain more information. All right, I'll stop recording and we will have question and answer session now. Glad to see all of you.